Hi friends, welcome back. Today we're making a formula based on Ariana Grande Cloud. This is a wonderful formula. I've made it before. It's pretty close to the original, so I think you'll be satisfied with it. It is an extensive, there's an extensive list of ingredients. This is a complex formula, even though the core of this is Baccarat Rouge 540, which is quite interesting. I got this formula, well, I created this formula myself based on a GCMS analysis that was posted on Fragrance Drama Instagram. I believe Christophe Laudemiel did the comparison, or maybe he paid for the reports. They put it online. They did a comparison between Baccarat Rouge and Cloud, and it's very interesting. You see that same Rougère core, the Hedione, Ethyl Maltol, Ambrox and Veramoss. This formula, this fragrance, was released in 2018. The perfumer is Clément Gavari. And I must say, I don't know how you feel about this fragrance. I quite like it. I've smelled this in public a couple of times, and both times I had to ask what the woman was wearing. And you know, both times, this gives you a sense of how unfamiliar I am with smelling this fragrance in public. But both times the gals were like, oh, it's Cloud, Ariana Grande. And both of them told me how much they loved the fragrance. So I don't know if this is polarizing. I don't get many female opinions on how good perfume smells to them, but the small amount of feedback I've gotten on this particular fragrance has been solid. I haven't gotten any feedback on this formula, so I'm hoping you can provide said feedback. But again, I've compared this to the original, and it ain't too shabby. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. If we look at the structure of this formula, most of it's in the base. Most of it is in this floral jasmine muguet category. We got a little bit in musk, this mossy earthy, that's Veramoss. So 7% in Veramoss, 10% in this musk accord. We've got 12% amber, most of that is Ambrox. A little bit in the sweets, that 4%, and that's not just ethyl maltol. There is a sweet accord that is underneath. If we take a peek at how much Hedione is in this stuff, well, a lot. 62% of this concentrate is in Hedione. 12% of the concentrate is in Ambrox. Let's look for the other two heavy hitters. 7% of the concentrate is in Veramoss. Almost 3% of the concentrate is in ethyl maltol. So, oh, and then we look at our musks. 7%, just under 8% is in Helvetolide. So, you know, add Helvetolide to that Ambrox, that Rougère core, you have most of the concentrate accounted for in those few materials. Ain't that interesting? What is extremely interesting to me is that when you smell this, even though the core of it is the same as Baccarat Rouge, and the majority of the fragrance is Baccarat Rouge, there's enough complementary and personality-oriented materials that make this a different beast. To my nose, this is not just a clone, this is variations on a theme. And I may have issues, we all have issues with clones, especially fragrances maybe that market themselves as clones, as dupes. I have less of an issue with variations on a theme. And I think there's a wide band of wiggle room there. But, you know, I don't see any harm in art when you find something that people are enjoying and you take that idea and you run with it and you try to iterate off of it and try to make it something of your own. I've got no problem with that. That might be an argument, though, for a different time. Right now, I'm going to get started with the dry materials. I'm making over 80 grams today. The end concentrate will be 16%. So, you know, this will be somewhere between an eau de toilette and eau de parfum, maybe solidly in eau de parfum territory. But I'm going to start with this Rougère core. Hey friends, quick interjection here. As I'm editing this, some of the numbers didn't seem right to me, and I reviewed the formula I blended with my reference formula, or the original formula. When I created the reference formula, I removed the dipropylene glycol and any other solvent that was a part of the initial concentrate. It turns out that DPG, other solvents, it's about 1/3 of the formula. It's 1/3 of the concentrate. What I did is I removed that and simply replaced it with ethanol. So the numbers that I give as far as the percentage of concentrate of, say, Hedione, Ambroxan, etc., it's well overstated. In fact, it's overstated by 50%, simply because I removed the DPG. So when I say I'm making roughly 80 grams, 81 grams at a 16% concentrate, if I were to swap out some of that ethanol and instead add back in the DPG and other solvents, what I would be making would be an 81 gram batch at a 24% concentrate. Because remember, I'm removing some of the ethanol and I'm putting back in a dipropylene glycol, which is considered part of the concentrate. DPG is 30% of the concentrate. So as I add that back in, I'm actually making something much more concentrated. This is still a real gray area for me. I'm trying to sort through this in my head, but just know that the formula that I post will include the DPG. The DPG should be considered as part of the concentrate, but I have not considered it a part of the concentrate. I just considered it a solvent, and so when I added a bunch of other solvents, I just removed it and added more ethanol. Back to the show. So let us start with our solid materials. We've got Ambrox. I've got Ambrox Super, and I need to do 1.6 grams of this Ambrox Super. So let's just get this started. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. Okay, don't. Ooh. That was close. I'm at 1.597 grams. I'm gonna halt right there. Okay, Ambrox, done. Next, Ethyl Maltol. Oh yeah. I'm so excited that I've started to be able to smell this. When I smell it on a strip, diluted at 10%, I get this dry, sweet, a little bit caramely, but really this dry kind of fuzzy smell. When I smell it right out of the bin here, it definitely smells like burnt caramel or burnt sugar. Burnt sugar, because burnt caramel is just burnt sugar. Because caramel is just burnt sugar, right? Or burnt sugar and butter. Ooh, that sounds really good right now. Just butter and sugar. Oh, my mouth is watering. Uh-oh. I am hungry. All right, let's get this done. Ethyl maltol at 100%. I need to add 0.36 grams. All right. That will do. That was a close one, but that will do. Okay, my desk is going to get quite busy over here. Okay, next, Veramoss. Fair bit of Veramoss. Let's see. We have almost a full gram of 100% neat Veramoss. Oh, yeah, Veramoss is strong, but it's also delicate. It's interesting. It doesn't overpower a fragrance necessarily. It helps contribute and support a fragrance, but it offers a lot of character and a lot of personality to that fragrance, especially in this dose. So I'm looking at 0.94 grams. Bing. Hug time. Hug time.
It is hug time.
Okay, 0.94. I'm going slowly because I don't want to overdo the Veramoss, but I'm getting close. There we go. Well within my 10% room for error. To the dirty dishes. Okay, before we add our Hedione, I'm going to add ethanol. There's a fair bit of ethanol. 48.7 grams of perfumer's alcohol. I'm just going to get messy and pour this in here. I should note my ethanol, all the ethanol that I use except for end product stuff that I'm working on, all ethanol that I use is pre-treated. I pre-treat it with butylated hydroxytoluene, or BHT. I find this just really helps all of my dilutions last longer, especially my ionones. But just to give you clarity and transparency on what I'm adding here, there's some BHT in here. We're going to add some other preservatives, like we've got Solgard from Freighterworks, and I've got some ethyl hexyl salicylate, otherwise known as octyl salicylate or octasalate, which we will also add. So let's do this. I'm just going to pour it in until I get, a little bit of the way there, and then I'll stop and pipette in until I get into 48.7 grams. Yeah, lots more. I'm only making a little mess. Just a little mess. Luckily, when you spill perfumer's alcohol, it just evaporates. Sure, it might eat through some of your stuff, certain plastic materials. I just teared this. I had 44 grams, roughly. Dang it. I need another 4.7. Ryan, you need to slow down, buddy. Okay. Okay. Almost there. Yeah. Okay. We're good there. That will start to dissolve, I think. And let's finish up with the Hedione. Now, in this formula, at least in the GCMS report and analysis, I think it just said Hedione. You can correct me if I'm wrong, of course. I think it just said Hedione. And I figured some of that's probably Hedione HC. So if I'm ever in the boat where I don't know what to add, I don't always want to add 100% Hedione HC. I'm not familiar with what that does to a formula at this level, at this concentration level. So what I will typically do is 2/3, 1/3 normal Hedione, high cis Hedione. Whether that be Hedione, Hedione HC, Cari Small Super, generic to high cis generic. It's just 2/3, 1/3 tend to give me a pretty good blend of Hedione. So we are going to add our Hedione, then give this a little mix, and then we're going to dip, because that's what we do. Okay, there are 10 grams of Hedione. Now this Hedione is at 50% concentration. And I love how Hedione, so many of the Lily of the Valley, light, airy jasmine materials have the same, it's like they have the same soul. They are all light, transparent. They are lifting, but at the same time, they have body. There's a smell to them, but that smell never seems to get in the way of anything else. It's It's amazing is what it is. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's amazing. Okay, mess alert. I've got a little splash of something on my scale. And if I were to show you a close-up of my scale, you would see a little dust, you would see a little coffee, and you would see these little bumps that are raised, and I mean very small, but they're raised throughout the scale on the plastic, because occasionally when I'm pipetting into the bottle or the beaker, it splashes. And that splash gets on here, and there's a chemical reaction with the plastic or whatever that material is. And I like to wipe it whenever I notice I've splashed a little bit. My wood desk seems to be okay so far, but interesting. The scale has been getting it. All right, Hedione HC, and this stuff is popping out of the bottle. Interesting. I'm going to do 6 grams of Hedione HC, and this is at 50% again. So far we've used neat ambroxan, neat Veramoss, neat Ethyl Maltol, and both of our Hediones have been at 50%. And then, of course, neat perfumer's alcohol. Wouldn't it be a little ridiculous if someone diluted their perfumer's alcohol in, say, dipropylene glycol or triethyl citrate? I don't know why I think that's funny, but something about that just seems funny to me. Okay, let's give that a mix. We are going to give that a dip because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other families or groups that we're going to add and then dip separately. Again, check this out, friends. We are almost at 100 mils. Almost at 100 milliliters. I will do the math post-video, post-production, and I will calculate how many grams we've already put in here. In other words, the percentage of the formula we've already generated and how much we have left. Here, let me see if I can show you how much we have left. We have all of these left. We've got sweets, woodies, and musk, florals, light florals, and preservatives. Apple accord. Look at this. Apple. And then a little bit of top note and projection. And we are already at almost, 95 mils? That's where we're at. It's so wild to me that we have 95%, whatever the amount is, of our formula already in place. Except for the Helvetolide. Okay, 90% of our formula already in place, whatever it is, and yet so much of the personality of the fragrance has yet to be added. You know, we've got 4, 5 materials constituting a majority of the fragrance, but it's not a majority of the personality. There's something about that just blows me away. I'm mixing this up right now. I'm trying to give this a blend. I want those last little bits of ambroxan and ethyl maltol to dissolve. Both of those can be a little stubborn, but okay. Let's give this a dip. Let's give it a dip. Let me write it down that this is our base. Base 1. Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, let's keep going. The question is, where do we go from here? Where I want to go is to add the musks and the sandalwood materials, and then to add the florals. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. We are going to start with Ambroxolide. Now, Ambroxolide is also in Baccarat Rouge 540, so we're still having some overlap here. But there's not much. There is really not much of this. Check this out. At a 10% dilution, I'm adding 0.06 grams. That looks to be 5 drops. 100 milliliters that we're making, roughly, yet only 5 drops of Ambroxolide. Next, Ethylene Brassylate. Now, there's a bit more Ethylene Brassylate. I didn't get it. It is right here. Okay. Musk tea. Do I have enough? Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord, let's see. I might just have to do it neat. And then, oh yeah, got enough. Oh, but you know that sound. It's time for new dilution. Okay, so this is also at 10%, 0.7 grams. Okay, ethylene brassylate, a wonderful workhorse material. It just really, really helps the fragrance last, gives it body. Let's see. Okay, next, Exaltolide. I happen to be using Exaltolide Total, a slightly cheaper version of Exaltolide, but you could use whatever you want. Use whatever you want. Okay, 10% dilution. I'm adding 0.12 grams for this batch. Perfect. Next, Habanolide, also at 10%. Now, I have under Habanolide here, Globalide. Is Globalide, I'm not Googling this right now, I'll just throw it out there. Is Globalide a different brand offering for the Habanolide molecule, whatever it is? I leave it to you to let the class know. All right, also 10% dilution. I'm adding 2.6 grams of Habanolide, so a pretty good amount. Let's see. Oh, good. Okay, we're good. We are good. Next, we're going back to neat. I have Helvetolide. 1 whole gram neat of Helvetolide. I like Helvetolide because there's a fruity aspect to it. Don't know why I picked that up, if everyone picks that up, but that's just the vibe I get. Check this out. I hope this is coming through on camera. I love watching the material, a heavier material drop through a lighter material. A little mesmerizing. Okay. All right. We're going to get into the woody materials. Now in here we also have a super amber. Didn't know where to put this, but we've got Norlimbanol. Let's just add it now. Let's just add it. 0.18 grams at a 10% concentration. And this is just like an aggressive woody amber. Definitely dry. It's just strong. It's there, you know. It is there when you smell it. Next, let's do our cedarwood. There's not much cedarwood. Not much at all. I've got 0.04 grams. Almost trace amounts. Almost trace amounts. Not quite trace, but almost trace. Now, in case you were wondering, because I'm sure you were wondering, does a cloud formula exist elsewhere? And the answer would be yes. Lab Laboratorium has a complementary formula for the Cloud type. I have it in my system. I haven't blended it though. I haven't blended it because this one worked so well for me the first time. And I wonder if Laboratorium, or the the owners of Laboratorium, whoever that is, if they just took a peek at that fragrance drama post, and then created the formula. I mean, why not? It's there, it's free, it's there and it's available. Why not package it up, do your own analysis, and then throw it on your site and just continue to give it away? Why not? I'm only speculating, but that's the story I make up in my head. Next, now maybe this is important. The next three materials are sandalwood materials. When I first made this formula, I nixed these. These are in the GCMS analysis. I nixed these and I added real sandalwood. I don't know how these substitutions are going to affect the outcome. There is not much of these. There's really not much. We've got 0.13 grams of Bacdanol at 10%. That we're going to start there. It's just a hint. At least for this batch size, it's really just a hint. Next up, let's do our polysantol. I've got, again at 10%, 0.03 grams. That's about 2 drops in a splash. Yeah, 3 drops, and we'll just get a little bit. And then last, we'll do our Sandalore. .05 grams. So, we're going back to 4 drops at 10%. Not much. Really not much. Okay. Let's blend this a little bit. Oh yeah, it needs blending. It needs blending when it gets a little cloudy, when you start stirring it up. Let's dip, and I will be sure to dip before I write. I realize that if I write what it is before I dip, sometimes I forget. And I don't like forgetting. Okay, so this is our musk and woods. Can't forget our Norlimbanol here, but let's park this next to our base. Okay, next, I would usually go to more base materials, but in this situation, I want to add some of the floral filler. In Baccarat Rouge 540, what I'm trying to do is compare this to Baccarat Rouge. I want to understand in my mind at what point this stops being Baccarat Rouge and it starts becoming its own thing. In Baccarat Rouge, there are other floral fillers. So I would like to add those so we have some floral body to the fragrance, and then we'll continue to add on the other materials. Let's start with benzyl acetate. To me, it smells like jasmine. A simple, simple jasmine. I have a 10% dilution, 0.06 grams. There's not much. For all of this, there's not much. The most that we put in here is Ethyl Linalool and Phenoxanol. And we'll talk about Phenoxanol in just a second. But let's start with our citronellol. %10 dilution, there's only 0.04 grams in this batch. So I need to do about a half drop. Yep, that'll work. Wonderful. Scoop. Running out of room here. Got to clean my desk. Next, Damascanone. And again, I'm using the total version, just like Exaltolide. You can just use normal Damascanone. or Damascenone total. It's whatever. Now this, ooh, I almost used the wrong one because this is at a 10% dilution. I need a 1% dilution. Damascenone. All right, we've got our 1% dilution. Now, which is okay. This stuff is strong. Damascenone is strong. And its IFR limit is pretty low. I think it's like 0.043% in the final product. Like, you can't use much of this. Okay, at 1%, I've got 0.08 grams in this formula. I think I sneeze more than 0.08 grams. I mean, there's just not much. Not much. Next, dimethylbenzylcarbonyl acetate, otherwise known as DMBCA. I like this stuff because it's unassuming, floral, and fruity. Also at 10%, 0.04 grams, just not much. Not much. Let's do the smaller stuff before we get into the heavier dosages. Let's get into our Magnolin. I really like Magnolin. This is a Symrise product. It's a single molecule and it's extra rosy. The description that I got from the Good Sense company reads floral green, reminiscent of magnolia, peony, geranium, grapefruit, and lychee, with an indolic nuance. I guess geranium actually is a better word than rose because it is green. It does have that green aspect to it, more so than rose. But for a single molecule, it is lovely. I mean, just like Phenoxanol, I guess. Phenylhexanol, which we're going to get to very soon, I love. I still have a scent strip over there that I dipped on September 19th at 10%, and I can still smell the phenylhexanol. So that stuff lasts. Next, let's do our rose oxide. This is at 1%, and I have 1/5 of 1 gram. If you would like that in decimal format, that is 0.2 grams. Interestingly, in Sam Macer's perfumery course, he mentions that rose oxide is one of the odoriferous principles of rose. In other words, it's one of the molecules that makes a rose a rose. And I found that really interesting and very surprising because I'm familiar with coumarin. You can't get tonka bean without coumarin, right? You can't get vanilla without vanillin. But I feel like you can get rose without rose oxide. So maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe I'm just not understanding what that word means. Maybe that word means something different than what I think it means. But because you can get a rose accord with phenyl ethyl alcohol, citronellol, geraniol, doesn't take much. All right, strong 10% ionone beta. Now, friends, ionones, methyl-ionone, ionone beta, ionone alpha, the ionones are notorious for going bad relatively quickly. Even in dilution, if you're opening it, closing it, you're using it a lot, these will go bad. Now, fun fact, when you smell this that goes bad, you'll be able to recognize when other of your materials go bad. There's just something about the ionones where you can recognize where things go off. When Hedione goes off, it's a different smell. It's like a sour milk. It's a very weird smell, but it's a little different. But when your ionones go off, you've got the scent memory now of what it smells like. So word to the wise, this is why I started pre-treating my alcohol with BHT, so I could get my ionones to last a little bit longer. And for better or worse, I do it with all the materials now. I just dump it. I use, it's basically, what is it? 1 0.1%. I think it's 0.1% BHT by weight inside of ethanol. But it has worked incredibly well. My materials last so long. So give it a try. Don't, if you're a chemist and you have best practices on this, like how much BHT to add, like for how much limonene you have or how many ionones, I would love to connect, because that question has been itching my brain for a while now. Okay, we have 2 more materials before we're going to blend and dip this. Let's do the easy one, Ethyl Linalool. And this is a lot like linalool, but a bit more delicate and fruity. A little bit more, oh no! I'm not gonna have enough. That means 30 mil, okay. All right, let me see if I can I'll take you on an adventure. I'll show you where I store my ethanol, or my ethyl linalool. Okay, here is one fridge that I have. I don't know what to keep in the fridge and what not to keep it. Well, I know some things that I should not keep in the fridge. That's okay, like sandalwood. And this is a small, like 3.6 cubic feet fridge. And I've got stuff all the way back here. I've got little 4 milliliter bottles from Perfumer's Apprentice. I got a bunch of stuff organized in here. I've got my 15 milliliter bottles, back there. It's crammed. And this is one fridge. Now, ethyl linalool should be in here. And this is really handy. I write little shortcuts on the top of each bottle. Sometimes they're hard to read because it's like, what is that, Palmarosa? My handwriting is terrible, but this helps me just be able to look on top. I don't have to pull everything out. Plus it's color coded with the fragrance family. Red is rosy florals. So, okay, we got it. Okay. So yeah, keeping your fragrances, your materials organized and color coded is really handy. Now what I'm going to do, because I need this soon, I'm just going to put this here, let it warm up a little bit, and let's add the ethyl linalool that we have. I know I'm going to have to make a dilution. How much is in here? Yeah, we'll use it. I'll get to as much as we can. Oh, perfect. So there's 0.4 grams in here. I need to add 1 more gram at 10%, because at 10% there's 1.4 grams required. Now, next up is a replacement. In the GCMS analysis, there was phenoxyethanol. Now, phenoxyethanol is very similar to phenylhexanol, and I don't have phenoxyethanol. I can't find it, don't know who supplies it, and I don't think I'm going to buy it. It's so close to phenoxanol, I'm just going to use phenoxanol. Now, phenoxanol, I think, has an extra couple carbons on it, and so it lasts longer. I think phenoxyethanol lasts about 80 hours on a strip. This stuff lasts at least a month. So and why is it at 1%? Oh, I don't even think I have a dilution. That's okay. Let me double check this. Phenoxyethanol 0.006. Yeah, so that's true. Okay. I need to add less of this. So I need to add 0.012 grams at 10%. Okay, that's 1 drop. And that is enough. let's make this Ethyl Linalool dilution. I hope we're warm enough here. I really don't want water condensation to accumulate. I think this should be okay. So let's do this. If I put in 8.1 grams of ethanol, how much ethyl linalool do I need to make a 10% dilution? 8.1 grams of ethanol. If you know the answer off the top of your head, good job, you're really smart. Remember, the way to figure this out is with division. You can say, if I want a 10% dilution, 8.1 grams is my solvent. 8.1 divided by 90% is 0.9 grams. That's how much ethyl linalool I need, 0.9 grams. Remember I said in the previous episode how I transcribe formulas. I can fit about 9.2 grams of material of whatever in a bottle. Sometimes 9.3 if I'm really getting in there. But let's mix this. I need to do a little bit more ethanol. Yep. If I can make it fit. Okay. Because I overdid the ethyl linalool, but that's okay. Yeah, I am filled to the brim. This will not close. However, that's okay because I need to take 1 whole gram and add it back into here. So I'm just going to mix this carefully. Blend, blend, blend. Blend, blend, blend. All right. I will pull out 1 gram, roughly. And our ethyl linalool will be handled. Ooh, good. We are good. And now I have a fresh batch of ethyl linalool. Now, I need to add, before I forget, whenever I make an update and I create a new dilution, I have to update formulaire and just remind myself, I have to update when this 10% dilution was made. This really helps with just having clarity on what I'm working with and nothing. And whether or not a material might be bad, how long a material lasts when it's diluted in the BHT, BHT ethanol. So it's just good information to have. I tell you what, if this is just a small hobby, you can get away with not tracking that. You can get away with not color coding and, labeling the tops of all your bottles. You can totally get away with that. But the bigger it becomes, the more complex. And when you deal with complexity, you got to start developing systems to handle that complexity, because you've just got one brain that probably has a whole lot of other stuff to deal with. So, okay. Floral. Oh, this is floral 1. Because right now we're going to add floral 2. Now this is more of the transparent floral. And while we're at it, we are going to add the preservatives. So let's get that out of the way. Now I'm going to be adding Solgard. When I add Solgard, I like it to be at roughly, 0.5% to 1% of the formula. I believe, that was close. I believe 1.6% of this formula, according to the GCMS analysis, was Parsol MCX. Don't know what that is, but Okay, and then 0.4% was the octacylate. So the octylsalicylate I have accounted for. The partial MCX I'm undercutting by about half. So why don't I just up it? I'm going to double the Solgard so we get closer to what's in the actual formula. It's not all partial MCX. I don't actually know what's in here, but I know if I'm packing this in a clear bottle, which I am, I want some sunscreens. I need some UV protectors, not just antioxidants, but UV, some UV absorbers, some sunscreen. So FraterWorks sells this. Heavy stuff. And I use it. And friends, if you're ever making a formula, maybe a bigger bottle, a bigger batch, and you haven't accounted for your antioxidants and your UV absorbers, do not just add it into the formula and then don't write it down. You will forget. You will forget. At least as time goes by, you will forget. You'll forget whether or not you put it in there. So if you're making a big batch, you're not bottling it immediately, and you go to bottle it, and you're like, I wonder, did I put any, you're going to forget. So write it down, put it in the formula, even if it makes your numbers not add up, put it in there. Okay, next up, octyl salicylate. This you can barely smell. It is a bit salicylate-ish. It's a bit anisic. It's like a bit, waxy. Anisic is a good word to describe it, but yeah, barely smell it. Okay, let's get into some floral with some personality, benzyl salicylate. All right, this is at 1%, and my formula calls 1% to 0.8 grams, but I busted out. You know what? No. Ryan, do this right. I have a 1% dilution. Let me just grab it. Okay. Gotta stay as true to the formula as possible. I think I'm trying to be better about this because this is growing, and like stuff that I'm working on, nights and weekends is also growing. And I have to have clarity on what I did, what I'm doing and what I did, because when I review this, I gotta know, did I do this exactly? I have to trust that I did this exactly to the formula. Okay. If I don't, and if I try to replicate it, I might have a problem replicating it, and I will never know. I will never be able to figure out what it is that I did. Okay. Now we move to the more transparent florals. Let's start with the bourgeonal. There is not much bourgeonal in here. This is some powerful stuff. It's green, it's muguet, it's lily of the valley, it's light, airy, all the words that typically describe the lily of the valley materials. And you know what? This is at 10% and there's 0.02 grams. So 2 drops will do it. 2 drops will get me over, but not by much. Next, we have Hexyl Cinnamaldehyde. Again, 10%. Again, transparent. Lily of the valley. Floral. We want 0.1 grams. Roughly 7 or 8 drops. If I do 7 drops, typically I'm at like 0.96, 0.94 grams. And if I do 8 drops, then I get to 1.05. I can never get it right on. Last, floral. Same, lily of the valley, transparent. It's uplifting, little green. Now, to me, floral has more body. It's got more depth, a little more oomph than the other materials. But that is not to say that it gets in the way. It's amazing stuff, these materials. They just don't get in the way. It's totally wild. Okay. I forgot to blend this, so let me blend this. Let me mix, mix, mix. Okay. When I dip, you dip, we dip. Okay, so these were our transparent floral number 4. And we have 3 more groups. And thank you for hanging on with me this long. Would you like to know a fun fact? I bet you would. That's why you're watching. 25 to 30% of those viewing watch the entire video. Anyone who's watching after 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, will watch the entire video. But there's a steady drop off of watch time from minute 0, 0.0 to roughly 4 or 5 minutes. There's a steady drop off. But if you make it to the 5-minute mark, and we are well past the 5-minute mark, you're going to watch the whole thing. And for that, I say thank you. Maybe I should put some super secret stuff, like, in the middle and in the end of the episodes, little Easter eggs or treats. I don't know anything that would be, I feel like I don't know anything that's awesome enough that would be considered an Easter egg. But if I figure it out, I will start planting those seeds and dishing out those Easter eggs when I can. Next up, remember, 3 more groups. We have a bunch of sweets. This sweet gourmand accord at the bottom. We have a little bit up top, some bergamot, lemon, dihydromyrcenol up top to give it some brightness. Then we've got this sick apple accord, which is crazy. Let's save the apple accord for last. Let's do our sweet base. We're going to start with aldehyde, C14 peach aldehyde, so called. Where are you? I know I got you. Gamma Undecalactone. That's why, because on top here it says Gamma Undecalactone. Because, as you probably know by now, this is not an aldehyde. Before GCMS analysis, the aldehydes were super popular, with Chanel No. 5 and all that jazz. So aldehydes C10, C11, C12, everybody wanted that. And story goes, by the way, this is 1% dilution. I'm putting in 0.2 grams here for this batch. Story goes is that gamma undecalactone, gamma nonalactone, these were discovered or invented, and someone needed a sales pitch. And they're like, well, we've got aldehyde C12. There's no aldehyde C14. Let's just call this aldehyde C14. And then it's sold. Yeah, good stuff. Let's stick with the gamma lactone and move from gamma undecalactone to gamma octalactone. 10%, 0.1 grams. All of these lactones add a delicious, creamy sweet note. Absolutely delicious. And I must say, there is a serious gourmand trend going on right now. I shouldn't say everyone. Kids these days, old man yells at clouds. Kids these days love smelling sweet, like scrumptious desserts, fair bit of vanilla, lactones for days, methyl-lactone for days, the good stuff. Now here we have gamma nonalactone, also known as aldehyde, so-called C18, or coconut aldehyde. This is at 10%. I'm adding in 0.5 grams. Now this stuff, just as lactonic, just as creamy, but it starts to edge away from fruit. It's still a little fruity, don't get me wrong, but we move away from the fruits towards something that smells like coconut. Okay, next up, Anisic Aldehyde. Love this because it is simultaneously anisic and aldehydic. You get that hawthorn kind of soft, sweet, spicy vibe, but then you get that dry, waxy aldehydic vibe as well. This is at a 10% dilution. I'm adding in 0.1 grams. Okay. It's good stuff. I'm beginning to think, if I don't have heliotropin, would this be a reasonable replacement? Not that they smell a ton alike, but you like, they're, let's see, because heliotropin also has this anisic, hawthorn, powdery vibe that anisaldehyde also has. I'm going to stew on that. Speaking of heliotropin, let's throw it in. This is at 10% at 0.08 grams. Wonderful. And I do like heliotropin. The little cherry smell, but it's also floral and fruity and a little, sweet and fluffy. It's interesting stuff. It's hard to pin down. You can't keep heliotropin in a corner. It's hard to corner it. Next, coumarin. And there is just a splash here. This coumarin is not to contribute to the personality of the fragrance. I think this is to send a subconscious message to your brain that this fragrance is complex. Because there ain't a lot of coumarin in this formula. Now, we've got 3 more. Let's do let me scroll to the top, acetanisol, or paramethoxyacetophenone. I hope I said that correctly. This is in the same spirit of that dry, anisic, hawthorn, sweet, powdery vibe. Yeah, slightly different character than the anisic aldehyde and the heliotropin, but same, they're cousins. They're cousins. All right, 10%, 0.06. Yeah, we'll leave it there. We will leave it there. Got 2 more. 2 more. Ethyl vanillin and vanillin. Let's start with our vanillin. 0.7 grams at 10%. Yeah, it just smells so good. I love the way that vanillin helps with richness and projection when used in smaller amounts. You combine vanillin with hedione, little coumarin, little bergamot, and it's the opening is just wonderful. Okay, we are good. Finally, ethyl vanillin. Yeah. The wonderful vanilla ice cream smell. Again, 10% dilution, half of a gram, 0.5 grams. Speaking of grams, someone commented in the last video with a small chuckle, an American using the metric system. And I did think that was kind of funny. And it got me wondering, what if there were more American perfumers? And what if perfumery schools were based in America, based in the US, not in France, not in Europe. Would we use ounces? You know? I don't know. Why not? Okay, what do we need to do? We need to stir and blend. You can take a bathroom break if you need to, and then come back, because we're taking our sweet time here, just enjoying the process. And let's dip. We've got 2 more groups, and I am going to kind of hustle through the end. Let's see. This was sweet. Lactonic, number 5. And I got it dipped. Good. Let's do the top notes. There's just not much here. Let's start with the dihydromyrcenol. So yeah, in a women's perfume, or should I say a young woman's perfume, we've got dihydromyrcenol. You know, that 90s classic for men's sport fragrances, men's freshies. 10% dilution, I'm adding 0.8 grams. This will give it a little liveliness, that's for sure. Next, Bergamot. From Calabria. 10%, 0.3 grams. In my humble opinion, not enough to really shift the formula, but it should add just a little bit of shine to the top edge of the fragrance, as will this amount of lemon. There's only 0.6 grams of lemon. And I'm going to have to hustle through this apple because this is a top note. And when I dip this, all of these, the lemon, the bergamot, the linalool acetate, essentially the limonene, that's going to start evaporating. I'm getting to 0.6 grams here with my lemon. Might need a couple more drops. Good. Spot on. Oh, I won't put that away. I'll use that to blend so we can dip. That addition was pretty fast. Okay. Let's dip. I might dip a lot. I know this is going to evaporate a little bit, so let me dip a bit. We'll put top 6. Last, apple. All the apple. Now, I don't know if this was the intention. I haven't looked at the notes on Fragrantica, what the marketing is, but I see Verdox, Hexyl Acetate, Manzanate, Fructone, and I immediately think apple. The moment I see Manzanate and Verdox, I'm like, apple. Now there's also alpha damascone, beta damascone, nice fruity notes. There is also allyl cyclohexyl propionate or propionate, and then allyl heptanoate. Those are more pineapple-y, green, apple skin and pineapple-y smells, but they contribute to apple as well. Then there's a bunch of green notes. Now, I didn't know if this was going to be an apple accord. So what I did is when I was getting out all of these dilutions, I dipped them all. I dipped them all in strips, and it didn't matter how much I dipped. I dipped them all in strips because when you put them all together like this and you waft, you can get a vibe. You're not going to get precision, but you can get a vibe. You get a scent cloud of the general accord. And this general accord is apple. So let's build our rather large apple accord. We are going to start with allyl cyclohexyl propionate or propionate. Propionate. I like saying propionate. That's that's where I default to. So I'm going to say propionate. This is at 1%. Do I have the right allyl? No, I don't. So, okay. So I need to divide this by 10 which means 0.06 grams. Yep, 0.06 grams. That's essentially half a drop. But you know what? With the size of this formula, it's not going to matter. I'll do 1 drop. I'll overdo it. The formula calls for, at 1%, 0.06 grams. Let's stay with the allyl, and we'll do Allyl Heptanoate. Again, this is pineapple-y, it's green, it's fruity. At 1%, I need 0.12 grams. It's about 9 drops. Okay. Next, Damascone Alpha. Let's get into the Damascones. I like these because they are also apple-y. It is more of a generic fruit. You get some plum in there. But you wonder, I brought this up in other videos, 1%, 0.06 grams. What does apple smell of? What does plum smell of? What does rose smell of? You can't say, oh, that smells like apple. When you're doing this, you can't say that smells like apple. You say, oh, that smells like alpha damascone. So perhaps it's not that this smells like apple and this smells like plum and this smells like rose, but instead all of those smell of alpha damascone. That's how my brain needs to start reorienting around scent associations. At least that's how I want it to start. That's how I want it to reorient. Okay. Beta damascone is a bit richer, a bit darker. You can use this in a tobacco accord as well. Now I'm using this at 1% again, and there's 0.04 grams. Okay. Friends, we are trucking. We've got 4 more fruities, and then we're going into the other interesting stuff. Okay, fructone. All right, not much fructone. 0.014 grams at 10%. That's 1 hefty drop. That's what that is. Yeah, and that's enough. Okay, the next 2 are strong materials. We have Hexyl Acetate. Yep. Green, fruity. I get more pear when I smell Hexyl Acetate. More pear. Now this is at 1%. I get 0.18 grams inside of the beaker. Wonderful. Next, manzanate. This stuff is a beast material. It's super apple-y, it's super strong, and it does not last. Its strength, it just burns out very fast. This is at 1%. I'm putting in 0.06 grams here. And this will definitely help with that apple top. I think it also helps give you the sense that this is a strong fragrance, in the beginning, at least in the opening. Now last, certainly not least, Verdox. A little more subdued than manzanate. I need 0.2 grams at 10%. Okay. Great. Now we're going to move into the green category. The next one is also a replacement. Now, I do not have cyclacet from IFF. It's green and woody. I don't have it. I don't even know who supplies it. I have something that is similar in structure. Jasmocycline. I do have this. This is a Givaudan product. And the notes are similar. It's floral, it's green, it's fruity, but if you look at the actual molecule, it's very similar. So I'm going to use this. I also used this in the past formula and it worked just fine. So I think we're gonna be good. But there's not much. 10%, 0.02 grams. You know, 2 drops will overdo it, at least with my pipettes. Let's keep going, because we're doing great. We've got 6 more. Cis-3-hexanol, otherwise known as leaf alcohol. Sometimes I see this as pipal or pipal. Now at 1%, I'm adding 1/5 of a gram or 0.2 grams. And this, to my nose, is one of those interesting ones that's strong. Its presence is made known, but it's made known through a supporting role. Not something edgy and sharp, but just something with mass. Cis-3-hexanyl acetate. Not much of this. Also at 1%, I'm adding 0.06 grams. 5 drops ought to do it. Yep. A lot of these green materials I'm adding at 1% because there's just not a lot. But they do contribute wonderfully to this apple accord. Next up, liferome. The same amount. At 1%, there's 0.06 grams. So we're looking at roughly 5 drops. Wonderful. Styralyl acetate. Styralyl acetate. 0.06. Or maybe it's styralyl acetate. ChatGPT tells me it's styralyl. Should I trust ChatGPT? What do you think? What do you think? 2 more, friends. So the styralyl acetate was, again, it was 1%, 0.06 grams. Next, we have Triplal and Undecavertol. Now, Triplal, 2,4-isocarbaldehyde. You can also use Cyclal C. I think there's a molecule called Vertolif you can use. It's the same thing. Again, isomer ratios may differ among them, but you know, it'll work. Now, I do like this. It's a bit more resinous and waxy. This is still at 1%, but I'm adding 0.16 grams. Perfect. And finally, after all this time, we have our final ingredient, Undecavertol, still at 1%. This great transparent green cucumber molecule, we're adding 0.18 grams. Okay. I cannot wait to smell this. Can't wait. Oh, all of those materials were sitting on top. That's interesting. Okay, I'm hoping I'm mixing this well enough. I really want to get a reasonable dip where I can smell what we have going on. I'm going to leave this in here. Okay, let's dip. We'll leave it out. We'll leave it over here. Okay, first, the base. The Baccarat Rouge base. Let's see what we smell. We smell the Baccarat Rouge base. Hedione, Ambroxan, Veramoss, Ethyl Maltol. Straightforward. Very straightforward. Done. Next, we added the musks and the sandalwood. Now, I would expect this to tone down and just bring it down a little bit. Calm down the Veramoss and the Hedione, but let's see. It does that. It does that, but in an interesting way. It's not like it pulls down the excitement of the Veramoss. Instead, what it does is that it complements that excitement with the warm, sweet, musky floor. And that complement, that contrast, takes my attention off of that high dryness of the Veramoss. Next, we added some floral body. Most of them were the red florals like citronellol and rose oxide, phenylhexanol. Oh boy, that's good. So subtle, but extremely meaningful. This adds a beautiful generic floral middle. And I mean generic. This smells so good right now. Oh boy. Oh my gosh, I can't stop. That one is very good. Okay, now the next up, we added the preservatives, the UV protection, but we also added the muguet, the transparent florals like floral, Hexyl Cinnamaldehyde, and the Bourgeonal. Oh wow. The effect here is so subtle, but it's amazing. It adds a generic transparent floral quality. It takes this beautiful floral, wraps it in a beautiful clear bubble, and lifts it up a little bit while expanding. That's it. Just very slightly. Still wonderful. My mouth is watering, and not just because I want butter and sugar on a stove, drizzled over popcorn. Oh, that smells so good. But I'm excited about this one. Here we added the sweet lactonic notes, and I'm excited. I'm really hoping this just contrasts that wonderful transparent floral bubble with this beautiful lactonic gourmand. Oh, that's stronger than I expected. Stronger than I remembered. The lactones are rich, so rich and wonderful. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Interesting that I'm not getting like a punch of vanilla or ethyl vanillin. I'm getting more of the lactones. Gamma Octalactone, Undecalactone, Nonalactone. Next, we added the Dihydromyrcenol, bergamot, and lemon. Let's see if they're still hanging around. They're hanging around, but it is barely noticeable. How do I describe this? This adds just a little front end. It's like someone coming to shake your hand rather than just waving at you. Just gives you a little bit more contact with that initial edge of the fragrance. I think that's coming mostly from the Dihydromyrcenol. Oh my gosh, the anisic quality of that sweet base is starting to come through. I might be getting oversaturated. Okay, let me first smell. Let me put some on my skin. And then let's smell. Final product. This is with our apple accord. Did I dip this? Or am I just nose blind? I think I dipped it. Man, I might be going nose blind. I would be okay if I was going nose blind because this stuff smells so good. I've noticed with Baccarat Rouge, I gotta let this dry. I've noticed with Baccarat Rouge, the formulas that I've made, I posted one formula on YouTube. I have a larger batch of a slightly different formula. And I go nose blind to it. Now, if I really focus still 6-8 hours later, if I really focus on what I smell like, then I can pick it up and it still comes through strong. And I've smelled it on other people, 6-8 hours, 10 hours after spraying it on, and I can still smell it on them. So if this is the same, then yeah, I will go nose blind to it. Okay, very interesting. The character hasn't changed a bit, but I am getting a little bit of apple. I can't fully trust my nose because I've, been smelling some heavy stuff. But this smells very good. Not gonna lie, this smells very good. On the skin, Yep, lactonic quality coming through strong. Yeah, this is fantastic. I won't keep you here any longer. Friends, give this a try. It's a substantial formula, but give it a try. And yeah, I think you're going to like this one. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.